Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Unscripted. I'm Marshall Brown. This is Brandon Dodd. Glad to have you join us again. We've been talking about relationships, healthy relationships. How we're designed for them. How sometimes they're not the easiest things to find, but how they're worth it. Really, I guess is what we've been talking about. The last couple of weeks. And so today we want to kind of dive in a little bit more deeply into, now that we recognize how we need healthy relationships, how that is an innate need in each one of us, that we need to figure out, okay, well, how do I foster that? Like, once I've got this person, I've at least started maybe some kind of the initial parts of a relationship, kind of the superficial stuff, but I want this to grow. I want this to be deeper. How do I do that? What are the tools to make that happen? Or what are the steps to kind of deepen that relationship? So I'm going to totally put you on the spot here. It just, with your dirt eating friend, like, how do you, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you need to go back and look at the other episodes, because Brandon has a friend that he used to eat dirt with, and they're tight, man.
That was how we connected. Our souls were tied together in that moment.
By the way, I never asked, was it spoons or hands? Like, did you?
Why bother with spoons when you have spoons at the ends of your arms, man? Like, there's no need for that. I don't want to bother with the vehicle when I can. I mean, just put your face to the ground and just go for it.
Just really dive in, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because I kind of want to keep. We've been joking about it. I kind of want to keep that image though too, of like, this is how me and my buddy, as like little kids, you're eating dirt too. That's interesting because that's my favorite flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so many of us, we could have like, we've got these mutual interests. We've got a couple of things of like, we've got the potentials that could be good friendships, but then how do I throw the water on those things? If we're talking about dirt and plants and stuff, how do I throw the water on it? How do I cultivate that friendship? How do I fertilize that friendship? So this little sapling, this little seedling that's there, how can we actually grow that and to make it into something that's large? And so, let
me interrupt real quick. I think like we've even talked about, we're talking mostly about friendships, but this could be dating relationships. This could be marriages. This could be family dynamics too. Like, especially what we're talking about today. Like, how do I, whatever that relationship is, I want it to be meaningful. I want it to be impactful. Like, how do I actually do that? Let's get, some practical tips on that.
Yeah. And so me, just like that, with me and this kid, it started off there in the dirt. And it just kind of happened. So I know that many of us have friendships. Like, I don't really know how we became friends, but just all of a sudden you start hanging out. Yeah. You start hanging out, and like, it seems like it's effortless and there's no work, and those friendships are there. But then there's other friendships that I know take more effort and take more work. Not that it's, like, if it takes more work, it's like, oh, like, should we really be friends because it's taking so much work? I mean, all the best relationships are the ones that you put the work
some
in.
kind of effort into it. Yeah.
Whether that's, like you said, the marriages or the friendships or, your dating relationships, you put more work in. You till the soil for longer, you take care of it. You get this close to the plant and breathe on it and talk to it and stuff and say, come on, little buddy, you've got this.
Yes.
The more it should be able to grow up. And so what are some of those qualities? So I'm almost wondering, I've got a handful of qualities. I feel like you've got some too.
Yeah.
As we were, this is unscripted, as we were kind of talking before this about like exactly where we wanted to go, and the avenue in which we get there is always different. It's just interesting though, because you looked at reputable sources like WebMD, Psychology
Today.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
And all of those things from that list, were they like super, like, let me just get a couple from you really quick.
Okay, so it's like be honest, be compassionate, set healthy boundaries, be there for each other. I don't know, just, those are some of the ones that I can think of off the top of my head.
Right. And let's make an assumption that they're not, if it's WebMD and Psychology Today, they wouldn't be coming at it from a Christian perspective.
Right. No, it was from a medical perspective and a psychologist perspective. Like, here's studies that show the most successful relationships, both just like, I have friends and these are healthy. These are like, make me feel good as a person, and I feel like I'm helping this other person in this relationship. Here's these different traits.
Yeah, from a medical and psychological perspective.
Right. Right.
Because I mean, mine is similar. Like, you need friendships that are real, not superficial. Friendships that are straightforward. Friends that are trustworthy. You want friends that are going to be there for you through the tough times and through the fun times. That they're going to be there for you, and friends that love you and have a mutual affinity or mutual affection for you. And that's from a psychological and medical perspective. And it's just interesting because it seems like all of the psychologists, or many psychologists and medical people, it's like we're kind of stumbling into, these are the things that friendships really are made of.
It's like a novel idea.
And
look at this.
It's like they're stumbling into these biblical pathways
Yeah.
that have been there for centuries, which is so cool. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad that our world is recognizing that these are the things that make good friendships.
Right.
But it is not, it's not new or novel.
Right.
It is ancient pathways that at least the Bible like really leans into. I mean, there's tons of passages in the Bible about.
It's one of the most talked about things throughout Scripture. Different kinds of relationships.
Yeah.
There's so many scriptures about marriage, about parenting, about dealing with your parents, about how to treat friends, about even how to treat your enemies.
Yeah.
There's verses about all those different things, and we have, and I'm not being critical at all. We have so many different avenues, online, or going to, a therapist, or whatever the resource is. We're trying to find how to make these things healthier, and those things can be helpful. I don't want to discount those things at all, but a lot of the principles that you find in those different avenues, you find in Scripture, and it's like God's given us this roadmap already, and like, I kind of gave it to you. Like, here it is, man. It's already here. Yeah. And we just need to lean into it.
Yeah. So I want to hear some of your list of what you've got first of some of these. I like the way that you said like roadmap. And so like, it's almost like, let's follow these. I don't want to say guidelines because it sounds very robotic.
Yes.
But let's follow these paths. And at the end of that is hopefully where you're finding friendships that are meaningful, friendships that the community that you're looking for. Yeah. So I just want to hear some of the ones that you had.
So a couple things that I thought of, and again, there's scriptures to go along with this. In the book of Ephesians, in chapter 4, Paul is talking about how, like, here's a person that I used to be, and here's the person I am now. So now that I'm this new person in Christ, what does that mean? Like, here, like, and I'm already doing too much explanation, but there's a whole bunch leading up in the first 3.5 chapters of Ephesians where Paul is talking about this new life that we have because of Christ. But then about halfway through chapter 4, it's almost like, okay, now that we acknowledge that, what does that mean? And then he goes into all this practical stuff. And the first thing he says is we need to be honest with each other. And it's not just, let's not tell each other lies. It's a genuineness. We need to be genuine and sincere and not be fake with each other. And the very next thing he says is, don't sin in your anger. So I'm going to get angry. I'm going to get angry at you. You're going to get angry at me. We're going to have some conflict, but do that in a healthy way. Don't make things worse. Don't treat a person in a harmful way just because I'm angry. And don't get into some, harmful choices because I'm mad at somebody else. He goes on from there and talks about, like, don't steal. Well, okay, I'm not going to steal from you. I'm not going to, try to grab your wallet. But I think the principle is even further. Like, don't rob people of their joy. Don't rob people of their purpose. Don't manipulate people. Don't use other people for your own benefit. Like, and you just keep kind of going through those verses. Don't have malice. Don't hold on to hate. Be encouraging. Lift people up instead of tearing people down. Be compassionate. Forgive when somebody does something that you really didn't deserve, but you go ahead and forgive them anyway. Like, it's all just bullet points, And
that's what I need. I need a straightforward path.
It's so good. And that's when I think about relationships, or even when I'm talking to other people about it, like even in marriage, we can go to the love chapter, and that's a good one too. In 1 Corinthians 13. But man, I go back again, maybe even for my own self, to Ephesians 4, and just like, how many of these things am I doing or not doing? And what does that tell me about the this particular relationship. Like if I'm not being completely honest with my wife, that has an impact. If I'm tearing my kids down with my criticism or my judgment, that has an impact on those relationships. And so just finding some of that practical information in Scripture is at least as helpful, if not more so, than some of the things that some of the good help that you can find online or advice from other people.
Yeah. It's just cool. 'Cause at least for me, I think it's difficult. I mean, you're in the workplace and stuff. I know one of the things that I've heard from other people is like, man, it just feels like that the Bible doesn't affect my everyday life.
Right.
Or these are things that happened 2,000 years ago, and these are, ancient truths and stuff, but they're ancient, man. Like, why would I come back to that? And it's so cool that if we're talking about relationships, if we're talking about friendships, we're talking about marriage, we're talking about, these are principles that stand the test of time.
Right.
Being honest, not having malice, not stealing, robbing other people from joy and stuff. 1 Corinthians 13, and like the right way to love somebody else.
Right.
The fruits of the Spirit of, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And like, that's my everyday life.
Yeah.
Like if you and I want to have a good relationship, we need to make sure that if we're cultivating the soil, that we have those things in the soil of our friendship.
Right.
And that and that we don't just put them in there one time and say, we're good. We're watering them.
Yeah. Remember that one time that I didn't lie to you? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I'm going to pin this whole relationship on right here, is that you didn't lie to me.
Yeah.
That's a good friend right there.
Yeah.
It's got to be this continuous thing.
Yes.
And it makes me think, at least for me, whenever I'm thinking about, I kind of shared with y'all, you've got the friends that you've had for a really long time and the different friends at different times. And, the relationships and friendships that I had as a 5-year-old and then as a 10-year-old and 13-year-old, those were all appropriate and real friendships for that age range.
Right.
And like how you get there and how you, cultivate those things and stuff too. I think it's really easy. This is a personal thing.
Okay.
I think it's very easy to look at somebody else and say, I need you to be these things. Like I'm going to look, and this totally fine. I need to look for, if I want a good friend, I need to look for somebody that is trustworthy.
Yes.
I need to look for somebody that's real, that's straightforward, that there is mutual affinity and love. I need to look for that. And we can...
And I want to interrupt real quick. Sometimes that's when people talk about, I don't know how to have healthy relationships. Part of it is because they have allowed themselves to be in those connections that aren't, like I'm going to be honest with you and real and genuine with you, but I'm not going to receive that back from you. But I'm so desperate to be in this relationship, this friendship, or this dating relationship, whatever, that I will sacrifice my own need for those things. But I'll still give them to you, but I'll be okay. I'll settle for not receiving those things from you. So go ahead.
No, that's so so next week we're talking about how we're cultivating good friends.
Yeah.
Next week, I think sometimes we may not even realize that we have negative relationships in our lives because this is just what I do. These are the friendships I've had. This is the relationship that I'm okay with. Man, and I'm just thinking, there's this quote from a movie that I like. It's called Perks of Being a Wallflower. Morgan's like, that's the dumbest movie in the whole world. There's some like indie movies that I'm like all into and stuff, but it's a student talking to the teacher and he says like, why? It's this girl that he likes. And it's a serious moment. He's like, I just don't understand why she would be dating this guy. Like, he's just not a good guy. He's not good to her. And then the teacher looks at him in the face and says, well, we accept the love that we think we deserve. It's like, bro, that was deep.
Yeah.
And this is just an indie movie. And so I just wonder, the relationships, so maybe it's, the marriage and the dating relationships, is that we think like, I don't deserve to have somebody be honest to me because I haven't been honest, or I don't deserve to like fully them trust in me because I haven't been trustworthy, or even, negative abusive relationships, whether that's verbal or, physical and stuff. Well, I accept those things because there's just something deeply internal about, I may not deserve good friendships.
Yeah, I've become convinced this is all that I deserve anyway.
Oh, and
Yeah.
God has so much to say about those things, which, I mean, we can talk more about that next week, but like if you hear anything, like you are worthy of love
Absolutely.
and you are worthy of acceptance and you are worthy of somebody that treats you right and you are worthy of people in your life that bring life.
Mm-hmm.
They don't take the little seedling of your relationship and plumb it down way
Yeah.
back in there and say, no, you're not allowed to grow.
Yeah.
Like, we deserve love. We deserve real, straightforward, trustworthy, honest friendships.
But I do think I totally interrupted your train
No,
of thought a minute ago
you're
because
fine.
I think you were talking about like these different character traits that I want to have in this relationship. I have to demonstrate those myself.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to get at, is that there's lots of times that like, no, it's the opposite of what we were just talking about. I'm looking for somebody that's real and straightforward. And yet if we are not, being real and straightforward and loving and not having malice, and not robbing them of joy, why should we need to be a friend that's worthy of being somebody else's friend too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need to be a friend that, I don't know what the right words there are. Like, we need to be the friend that we're seeking. We need to be that friend.
Right.
And that's kind of hard to stomach sometimes, of like, no, I like, you give me all the things. I'll like, you give me 100%. I'll just give you 20%.
Yeah. But I really want that 100%. And so, and we hold an expectation over other people, sometimes verbally, or sometimes we have an expectation that other person doesn't even know is there. Like, I'm expecting you to do all these things and jump through all these hoops, for me. And I might not even communicate that to you. You may not even know that that's what I'm expecting. But then when you don't fulfill that, now I'm mad. Now, like, well, we can't be friends. Well, why not? Well, you didn't do all these things. I didn't know you wanted those different things from me. You know what I'm saying?
It's interesting you don't want to be friends because you never told me that this was a condition in our relationship.
But also, to your point, like, how much am I doing those things for other people? And again, there's scripture about this in Proverbs. I believe it's chapter 18, where now I will say this. Here's where I'm going Bible nerd for a second.
Do it.
There's, if you go in our English Bibles, you know, there's how many different translations of the Bible are there? But there's two different ways that this verse is translated. It's Proverbs 18, verse 24. And one way says that a friend of many, what is it now? Now I can't think of it off the top of my head, but you're gonna come to ruin. It's like a guy who has a whole bunch of friends is going to end up coming to ruin. And the principle is, like, you can have a whole bunch of people who are fake, or who are manipulative, or who are just connected with you because they can get something out of it, and that's going to end up being a problem. Now, there's another English translation of this, and it goes back to, like, that particular verse was written in ancient Hebrew, and so now we have to look and go, well, here's these little letters, and here's the squiggly line here means this and not this, or whatever. And so that's where a lot of the disagreement is, because the other way that the Bible translates it, or that translators nowadays translate, is whoever wants to have friends must show himself to be friendly. In other words, I have to, if I want a lot of friends, how friendly am I being to people? What am I doing to actually foster those friendships? And why do I have an expectation or feel disappointed when I don't have those meaningful relationships, when I'm not doing those things? I have this expectation, but I'm not doing it.
That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a challenge too, because I know that I've got good friends that I let down because I don't text back, not out of malice, but out of laziness and forgetfulness.
Right.
And those friendships are affected by those things.
Yeah.
And that stinks.
Right. But even our, like, I keep bringing up the other relationships, but think about in your marriage relationship, how many couples struggle because of unmet expectations? You know,
I feel like we're in some premarital counseling.
A little bit, I guess,
Yeah.
but I'm not even talking about like sexual stuff, and just interacting, feeling loved and feeling respected and feeling honored. And, like, you can talk to couples. You've done it. I've done it, where you talk to couples and they're like, well, he doesn't ever respect me. Well, she doesn't ever treat me with kindness. So she doesn't, honor me. Well, he doesn't meet my needs, and, just kind of go back and forth. And sometimes you got to stop and go, okay, but are you doing those things for the other person? because why would they do those things for you when you're not doing it for them? And it's not it doesn't need to just be a, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing, but just recognizing like it's wrong for me to, and it's unhealthy for me to put expectations on another person that I'm not going to hold a standard for somebody else that I'm not going to hold myself to. Like, that's not fair. Yeah, that's not healthy.
I was disappointed today that you didn't bring me McDonald's. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
That's too bad because I didn't communicate that I've wanted McDonald's or anything. Did you tell me? So, no, of course not. But I'm disappointed. I should have just known. You should have known. Man,
if you really love me, you would have known.
Yeah. And that's marriage stuff. But I think friendships do that too, of like, well, I just thought that we would text more, or I just thought that we would like physically get together more, or that we would connect more on these things.
Yeah.
And it's not that you need to sit down and be like, well, here's the expectations for our friendship. Yeah. But there should be.
Number one.
Yeah. I think there should be like this budding relationship that I have with this dad that I talked about last week, the dad of one of our preschool kids' dad, and we kind of connected. We don't have any expectations, but what's cool, well, I say that, we do get together for our kids to play. Mm-hmm. And then probably every 3 or 4 times that our kids get together, we'll go grab lunch or something. Mm-hmm. Now, did we sit down and say, this is the way that things will be?
Yeah.
As foretold. Like, yes. It's like, this is kind of like a rhythm.
You didn't walk in with a contract and go, I'd like for you to peruse this, and if you'll like, initial sign.
Yeah. Oh.
And we will be friends.
McDonald's for lunch, that's not a part of the deal. We have to get Cane's or Slim's every time. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a rhythm that I think that we're at least beginning to get to, of like, well, you know what? This is the way that we're able to operate, and this is the capacity that we want to be able to be friends and hopefully grow in that too. Mm-hmm. So I think a couple of parts of those things that I want to capitalize on a little bit too, of like, okay, so here's the qualities of good friends that I want and things too. So let's just take it on you and I, of like, what can I do to grow that, to grow that friendship? What are the ways that I can put fertilizer in, that I can, really water it and take care of this little budding friendship? How can I grow that? And that can be in any relationship, like you said, like, how can I, what are the principles to be able to grow what's already existing? Maybe your plant is older and is more mature and fruitful and stuff. Well, if you just stop fertilizing it, or if you just stop taking care of it, that's eventually going to wither away as well. So these are things that just need to keep on going.
Yeah.
I think capitalize what you said, somebody that's real, somebody that's honest, somebody that's straightforward.
Somebody genuine.
Yeah. Why do you think? Well, I mean, it's you know, the friends that are not that, the friends that all of a sudden you realize that some of the things that they've been telling you have been shaky, some of the things that they tell you they've not been honest with you. What does that do to the roots of that friendship?
Oh, it totally corrodes it, man. Like, you always, from that point, especially if there's, either gossip or lies, or you just find out like this person is not who I initially thought they were. It's almost impossible without just consciously saying, I'm not going to let this bother me anymore, for it not to at least be a factor, in that relationship. I mean, it's always there at that point.
Yeah. It's almost one of those, I don't want to say a core value, but if I don't trust you, I'm not sharing anything deep with you.
Right.
Ever.
Right. This is all going to stay on the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Proverbs kind of hits that too. Like, gossip separates friends. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to tell people like, things about I know that happens in the workplace too. And it may not even be intentional. I was just like, oh man, did you hear that? This, and it's the water cooler conversations, but it's those kinds of things. And I know that both of our wives are in the workforce, right? Go out and work with people not in churches and those kinds of things. And I'm sure, I'm not even gonna make it I'm sure your wife has come home at some point and said like, man, these people said these things, not necessarily about her, but these things. And just my wife has come home and said, maybe I'm not as close as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And struggled.
Oh yeah.
With that, because the bedrock of what it looked like, of what she felt was there, it turns out that either the roots were never there, the roots had corroded, to use your words, and then all of a sudden a gossip comes, or something that reveals like, oh, I can't trust this person, or wasn't, and the plant just falls over, or immediately isn't there.
Yeah.
And that just stinks.
Yeah.
Having to work through those things.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think everybody can agree that those things have happened to them. And those friendships that's hard. And there's a forgiveness that you and I could have of like, if I broke your trust or something, that we would be able to forgive each other. We live in this cancel culture that's like, well, if you hurt me, sorry, buddy, we're cut, we're over. We got to be in an office next to each other, but we sure as heck aren't going to.
Yeah.
Like,
and there are no second chances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, there is something to be said for forgiveness and all of that too. But if it's this consistent, I feel like I can't trust you with anything, or you're going behind my back. That is not a good space to be in with friendships, too.
But to your point, I think forgiveness has to be a factor. If you want to hold on to this relationship, there has to be forgiveness. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it is impossible. I think physically impossible for humans to actually completely forget, at least initially. Like it takes time to forget. I'm sure I have forgotten different ways that that people have hurt me over the years. I hope people have forgotten the ways that I have hurt them. But that doesn't happen immediately, but I can still forgive that person. And I think that's a key part. You talk about being real and being genuine. I think part of being real and genuine also is being vulnerable enough to say, man, I messed up. And I screwed up this part of our relationship. I said what I shouldn't have said, or I did something I shouldn't have done, and I am sorry. And being willing to own that is a huge part of friendships. Like to be willing to own my mistakes in any relationship. And at the same time, when the other person in the relationship owns that, I need to be willing to forgive. Now, well, is it going to take some time for me to completely forget that? If I ever do, yeah. And might it take me even a little bit of time to be okay with that person? Sure. But the call is to forgive. I mean, forgiveness is all about, I'm going to let go of this thing. And I think we think of forgiveness a lot of times, as in, okay, if you did something to me and then you're like, well, even if you apologize and you're like, well, you need to forgive me, and that's your expectation. I'm like, well, I'm not going to forgive that. Or if I do, I'm still going to keep bringing it back up. Well, I haven't truly forgiven it. If I'm holding on to it, it's a burden for me as much or more so than it is for you. Forgiveness is about me letting go. It's about me being set free from continuing to hold on to this thing that you did to me. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm kind of talking in circles right now.
No.
But I think that's the key part. You mentioned being real and being genuine. I think even the act of apology and forgiveness is part of that genuineness. I am truly sorry. Yeah. I am truly at least trying to let go of what it is you were sorry for. Like there has to be that element of forgiveness and reconciliation as a part of that true, deep friendship, because otherwise it will stay superficial. I'm not going to forget.
Sorry.
We may have offices next to each other and we can be cordial and we can be friendly, but we're never going to be what we once were.
Yeah.
Not because it can't happen, because I'm not going to let it happen.
Yeah. I feel like we're in a culture that is, well, they wouldn't use the word forgiveness. We live in a culture that says, if you wrong me, we're done.
Yeah.
Or if you and I disagree on a couple of things, we're finished.
Right.
I'm sorry. That's it.
Yeah.
And there's no second chances. There's no forgiveness and those kinds of things. And man, what life that you can have to have a friend that whenever they mess up and they hurt you, that you're able to say, man, you know what? Like I value this. And if it was a true oversight, or if it was a true, like, man, you hurt me, but we can repair this. And it's something that can be healthy and be good. That's so awesome. But a friend that whenever I hurt them, that they're real enough to say, man, you stepped on me and I'm not okay with it, but listen, like I forgive you of those things. And maybe I need to set more boundaries. Like you said, maybe I need to set more boundaries. But let's start to rebuild that if that's something that's healthy.
And boundaries, that's another part of a healthy friendship, as I mentioned before. And that's a biblical concept too. But boundaries can be shifted too. I can expand the boundaries. I can shorten them. It may be one of those things where right now, this is as far as we're going to go. But then a year from now, who knows? Like, we can keep building on that.
And I can make it a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is the capacity that we're in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the last aspect, I feel like it's really churchy.
That's all right. I'm here for it.
No, it's not. It's not really. I think that it's a core of what we need to have. It sounds weird whenever I think about relationships that I have with a couple of my guy friends and stuff too. I remember one of my guy friends was like, "Hey man, we need to normalize saying I love you to each other." I was like,
which is not something the guys say to each other, man.
Man, like we're just out here in this coffee shop, or we're just out at this chicken joint. Like, quit it, buddy.
Yeah.
And I mean, he brought up something important.
I'm trying to picture any one of my friends just saying that in a conversation. If they had said we need to normalize saying I love each other, I'd have been like, no, we don't.
Actually, that's not something that we need to do.
Go ahead.
Thanks, buddy. This was a good relationship,
Yeah.
a good run that we had.
Yeah.
I just broke down crying and said, "You're right, buddy. Like, we need to." And he was, ultimately getting back to a very, very core biblical principle. But I think, some of the conversations we had this last week of sometimes we put, our marriage friendships, or I guess they wouldn't be our marriage relationships, and then like those are top tier friendships, and whenever I or not top tier, those are top tier like love relationships and stuff too. And the way that I love my family, the way that I love my kids, those are top tier. And that friendships, it's like love, but it's different.
Yeah.
Like it's secondary tier. Like I love my family and I love my spouse, but the way that I love my friends is almost secondary. And we talked a couple days ago, or a couple of podcasts ago about how Jesus almost puts those things together about, whenever he said like greater love has no love than this, that somebody would lay their life down for their friends. And he says, I love you and you are my friends. And so that's what he does. And so he puts those things really, really close. And that's cool. And so, in that moment, it wasn't like, yeah, buddy, I love you. But what it was like, man, listen, there is an aspect of friendship that is so, so, so important that I think that we undervalue.
Yes.
And so, like I said, I feel like we've brought up the Bible a whole lot too, which, I mean, if you're listening to this, you know that we're both pastors, and we love the Bible in the way that Jesus come and acts with us. And to be really corny, Jesus is a friend of ours, and that we can call to him as a friend, and that's what he considers us, friends, and we consider him our Lord and Savior at the same time. But there's this guy named David in the Bible, and he's got his buddy named Jonathan. And there's these verses where they start going through some troubles, start going through some adversity, but they've kind of been friends for just a little bit. And there's a certain traumatic event that happens, and Jonathan looks at David, and it says that Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. Which, take a pause, man. I love my friends, and I love my wife that way. I pray that I love my wife that way, that her needs are not only as important than mine, if not more important than mine, but to love another person as a friend and to love them in the same way, that's intense. Yeah. If I actually loved my guy friends in the way that I love myself, and like checking up on them all the time, like really just like, man, that seemed like you had a tough week. Like, are you okay? And just like doing that takes a lot of work and effort, right?
Well, and even sacrificing for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like, this is a part of the cultivating and stuff too.
Right.
But then another part that just is crazy. The Hebrew word, we're talking about Hebrew, the Hebrew word for friendship is aheb. And I have no idea. Aheb, it's H or A-H-E-B.
You have to clean off that mic after we're done this podcast.
Got some spittle on it. Aheb. And it literally means one who loves. So this core word for friendship back in the Old Testament is one who loves. And what was cool was that it said that Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. And then from that day on, the actual Hebrew words there were David's soul and Jonathan's soul were knit together. Like the way that our fabric is put together. If you've got two different kinds of fabric and attaching the sleeves so that like that's how our clothes are knit. Like the soles are knit together.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
If you're, I mean, whenever I think about that, I think about marriage.
Yeah.
But this is the closeness that these two guys had.
Yeah.
And good friendships. I mean, this is when the plant is big and mature and stuff like that. There has to be love. There has to be this like, man, you know what? I pray that each of us have friendships like, at least one friendship like that.
Yeah. That'd be the goal. That'd be what to shoot for. I mean,
Yeah.
and like, as you're saying that, like, Solomon himself said a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Like it's knit together. So that's what we're shooting for. So we're going to continue this conversation again in our next episode. And we're going to kind of look a little more deeply at kind of the opposite of like, okay, well, what if I don't have healthy friendships or the relationships I have, they turn unhealthy? Like, how do I evaluate that? And what do I do about that? So that's what we're going to talk about next time.
Yep.
So thank you guys for joining us for this episode. Hope you join us next time. We'll see you then.